Monday morning in the city of Toronto, and we have a heavyweight matchup tonight on the ice. Scotiabank Arena, Boston Bruins, Toronto Maple Leafs, NorthStar Bets' very own Steven Psihogios joining us today. Stevie, we're going to touch on your Bruins taking on Albert's Maple Leafs in a couple minutes. But first, we got to start off with the Toronto Maple Leafs. An impressive victory in the shootout. Questionable call with Mitch Martin, that shootout winner, but the Leafs get the 2 points against the Rangers, 9-1 in their last 10 games. Ever since the Ridley Gregg thing, it truly was a spearhead moment. So, Stevie, simple question on a Monday morning. Where do the Leafs stack up in the Eastern Conference now?
Well, first, I really like the use of the word spearhead to define what the Ridley Gregg, Morgan Riley situation was, because it's exactly what it was. That was perfect, Justin. But right now, the Maple Leafs, you look at the landscape of the Eastern Conference, they just beat the New York Rangers. If I were to rank them, being very honest, I would put them as the third best team in the Eastern Conference. I'd still take the Rangers over them, even though they just beat New York. I'd still take New York over them, and I'd still take Florida over them. But that's about it. If we're talking a 7-game playoff series, I really do think they are the third best team in the Eastern Conference. The way they're playing right now, they're getting good, not great goaltending out of Ilya Samsonov. He's made some big saves when they needed him in overtime. That save on Panarin was fantastic. And you mentioned they got a little bit of luck. There was that questionable call on Marner in the shootout, but let's rewind it a little bit to overtime when Alexis Lafreniere hops over the boards to break up a Mitch Marner breakaway. So, you give and take a little bit. I'll be fair. I'm usually the Maple Leafs' hardest critic, but I'll be fair on them in this instance. So I have them number 3 in the Eastern Conference right now.
Yeah, this is a different Leafs team. I'm still kind of torn, and if I truly believe that they've kind of turned a corner in how they play and how they're going to play come playoff time. But 3 of their last 4 wins have come against the Golden Knights, the Avs, and now the New York Rangers, and potentially the Boston Bruins tonight. Obviously, nothing is a sure thing when the Bruins come to town, but they're playing a different type of hockey, a stronger style, and it looks like Keefe, for the first time in a long time, has at least 3 lines he can believe in, right? The first line is pretty much untouched with Marner, Matthews, and Nyes. The second line has defensive issues, but there's offense there. Your third line you just found looks like a playoff line, in my opinion, right? Tavares, Jarnkrok, Bobby McMahon, they play a strong style. And the fourth line, since Ryan Reeves has come back, since being injured and healthy scratch, is playing like a new man. So I don't remember the last time the Leafs had 3 solid lines they can really depend on. Coming down the stretch, it's going to come down to, I think, how that decor holds up. And you mentioned it, right? The goaltending has been good, but how long can it last?
Yeah, I believe, look, the Leafs have been on a tear of late, but do I put them above the likes of the Rangers, Florida, Boston? No, I would say they're the 4th team in the playoffs right now. I really like what Detroit's doing right now as well. I really, really think that Detroit has a good young nucleus. I think they're buying into what Steve Yzerman has built. I think that the Detroit Red Wings will be a tough out. Tampa, we don't know. The regular season is nothing to them. I think the Leafs have a chance. We were recording Homestand Leafs earlier this morning, and I was saying to Albert, I was always on the train that the Leafs are going to get gentlemen swept or bounced in 6 games in the first round. I think now, depending on the matchup minus Florida, this could be a 7-game series now, so they get an extra game. That could be a coin flip. But to me, Stevie, the biggest thing is just the defense score. Can you trust that defense score, and can you trust the goaltending matchup? The goaltending, I believe, in any first-round matchup for them, most likely is going to be a mismatch. They're going to have the lesser goalie. So when I look at the Leafs, I believe that there's been a whole lot of better play, a whole lot of better good habits, but I'm not ready to say that they're a top 3 team in the Eastern Conference, Stevie. I can't go there. Yeah.
Hey, you know what? Like, when we get into tonight's game, I'll a little tease here. I'm not picking the Leafs tonight, but if we're talking a 7-game series, I do like them over the Boston Bruins just because the way that they're built. I think they've got more depth up front than Boston does. Boston really lacks a lot down the middle of the ice. I've talked about this on the show before. I don't think they have what it takes down the middle of the ice. But the most surprising part about Boston this year has been how poorly they've defended. They've really been bailed out by good goaltending all season long. And now you're starting to see Linus Ullmark's play dip. Who knows if that has to do with his name being in some trade rumors this time of year or whatnot. But even Jeremy Swayman, his play has tapered off a bit as of late. So I think Boston has been one of these teams that are super fragile because they rely so much on the goalies. You look at a team like the Pittsburgh Penguins, they've been built that way this year too. They've had a lot of good goaltending this season, and they find themselves on the outside looking in with a good goal differential, mind you. Everything else, you look at Pittsburgh, you're like, why isn't this team doing better? But they, like Boston, I think, don't have a lot of depth up front, and they don't have strong enough play on defense. So I think Boston, forget what you've known about this Bruins team in past years. They do not defend the way they have in previous renditions.
So hold on. Is Marchand and Montgomery getting on the horn right now, calling Bergeron, saying, hey, one more? You got one more in you?
It wouldn't hurt. I don't think he could be any worse than what they have right now at center. It's just not – everyone's playing up a spot, and that's not a good place to be. I like Coyle, not a number one center. I like Zacha, not a number two center. If he is, it's not on a very good team. So I think that Boston is just in a spot right here where they don't have a lot of assets, and I don't think they're set up well enough to sell and get better because that player that they need is not available via trade. So if I was the Bruins actually heading into this deadline, I wouldn't mind if they swapped out some players for some youth. And I'm not saying you need to go out and grab draft picks, but I think Boston should be looking to trade. You got your guys like Jake DeBrusk. You got good secondary pieces on this team for young players who aren't yet in the NHL, but are going to be making that jump in 1 or 2 seasons.
Stevie, I have the ideology, maybe it's a false ideology, that the Bruins just don't really care about the regular season now that they're kind of cemented. They got to that really good start and they kind of cemented this up that we're going to be a playoff team. We're going to have, home ice advantage in the first round. Do you think that this team is equipped to just flip the switch come game one of the playoffs and just can be a completely different team after what happened last year in the first round?
I'd like to say yes, but as I've said, I don't buy it yet with this team. I think they have overachieved this year, which makes it hard for me to believe that there's a switch that they can flip to be even better. I think they've played and punched over their weight. I think a lot of people said the same thing about that team last year. I think last year's team was much better than this year's team, not just by looking at regular season results, but they took a Florida Panthers team to 7 games. And at the time, everyone dissected and said, what a collapse. But you take a step back and look at it now and you say, wow, they took the Panthers to 7 games. Florida really had their way with every other Eastern Conference competitor. I think this Boston team is not at that level. And there's nothing I think that they can add that will fix that. So I would say no. I don't think they have that switch that they can just turn on and then everything will be okay.
Okay, let's talk about tonight's game. So you have 2 teams going in different directions. You have the Leafs who are 9-1-0 in their last 10. Then you have the Bruins since the All-Star break, 4-4-5. Penalty kill is horrible. They just got destroyed by the Islanders, which is something you don't really see. And listen, I watch a ton of Premier League and I watch a ton of soccer. And whenever there's a big match like we just had in the Manchester Derby between City and United, they say form goes out the window. Whatever happened leading up into that game does not matter. And I feel like maybe you can agree with me here or disagree. When it comes to the Leafs and Bruins, it doesn't really matter how either team is playing because it almost seems like a one-off between the two. And they seem to step up whenever they play each other.
You're right. This is a rivalry that extends pretty far back. I mean, as long as this Maple Leafs core 4 has been in the NHL pretty much, their number one rival has been the Boston Bruins. They have gone up against them numerous times in the playoffs, have fallen short. This game means a lot to the Maple Leafs, but the same is true about Boston too. There's always something that comes out of these Bruins-Leafs games, a little controversy or whatever. Remember earlier this year, they met Marchand tripping up Liljegren by the boards. There was all that. There's always extra eyeballs on these games. And that's why I think Boston wins tonight. I'm picking them at plus money, plus 110 over at NorthStar Bets. And the reason why actually has more to do with recent form than you think. Because Boston just got walloped on Saturday night, I like them to bounce back tonight. This is a Bruins team that does have a lot of veterans, does play for each other. They do have a lot of pride. They don't have that high-end skill, but they will take tonight's game very seriously. And I think because they're coming in off an arguably the worst loss of the year, and the Maple Leafs are coming in off of one of their best wins of the season, I think you're going to have the angrier team look better tonight, and that's going to be Boston.
Yeah, Boston played the Leafs well, man. They've won the last 5 against them. Like, you can never discount Boston. If I'm the Leafs, the scariest thing to happen, like you mentioned, is them getting slapped by the Islanders because you're waking up a beast. Let's be real. Pasternak loves playing the Leafs.
He does.
Marchand loves playing the Leafs, and it's just a recipe for a Boston Bruins win. But I'm still kind of torn though between these two teams. It really is a 50-50 game. We were talking before we came on here, Stevie, on NorthStar Bets, plus 320 for the tie to go overtime. It's not bad.
No, it's not bad when you consider Boston. It feels like every other game these days, if not every game, goes to overtime. Like half of their losses during this tough stretch, you look over their last 10 games, they've got 5 overtime losses. They're the only team in the NHL with more overtime than regulation losses. And you look at the Maple Leafs, they've got the most shootout wins in the NHL. So plus 320 to go to overtime isn't a bad sprinkle. I do think, though, you get Boston pulling out the win. If you like the Bruins or tie, minus 152, not a terrible price to pay over at NorthStar Bets as well for Boston to the tie. I think that Saturday game was a real wake-up call because, as I mentioned, a lot of those losses as of late have been close ones where they still got the loser point, so you don't beat yourself up too much for it, but you get slapped 5-1. You give up a hat trick in the first period to Kyle Palmieri, you're gonna wake up. Like this, it wasn't Connor McDavid lighting them up in period 1. It was Palmieri.
Stevie, I want to touch on, we haven't got your thoughts on the Lyubushkin acquisition by Brad Treliving. He played with Morgan Rielly, got knocked out of the game by Matt Rempe. Twofold question here. Rielly Lyubushkin, can that be a top pairing to match up against other teams' offensive best line, like the Pastrnak line? And the third line with Cal Yarncrow and John Tavares and Bobby McMahon, can that be that traditional third line shutdown line come playoff time as well?
Yeah, I like the offense more than I do the defense here. The reinsertion of Yarncrook into the lineup, I think, does make a big difference. You saw it do as much this Saturday night. It gives them a little more punch on that third line. And as I've said on this show, too, in previous weeks, I actually think it would be better for Toronto to add to the offense than the defense. The addition of Lyubushkin, like really, I could really care less. Like it doesn't do anything for me. He's slow. Yeah, okay, he's tough, but he's slow. You don't want a guy that slow playing big minutes, and I don't think he's going to serve as a good shutdown guy. Like in all honesty, like what am I going to say? I mean, Matt Rempe, for goodness sake, Matt Rempe comes charging at him from halfway across the ice, and he can't even move out of the way. So like this guy doesn't have the speed. I don't know how you don't see that guy coming. 6'8", coming in like a train from the center ice stop, pretty much. Right in front of the net. But anyways, you know what? I'm not the biggest fan of the Lyubushkin trade. It might be Brad Treliving's way of saying, you know what? I tried. You can't say I didn't do anything. I did make one trade, but it's not anything that moves the needle for me in any direction.
Well, let's get right to it then. Stevie, what are your best bets for tonight's NHL slate? And give us a side on who you're leaning on towards Leafs Bruins tonight.
Yeah, I'm going with Boston. I'm taking them at the plus money odds, a plus 110. I do think they throw a pretty hard punch in this game. This is a good spot for Boston. Elsewhere, I like the Rangers, plus 108 at home against the Florida Panthers. I understand how great Florida has been, but the Rangers have been just as good. And they're 21-7 on home ice this season. So if you're going to give me plus money odds on a team that's very good on home ice, I'll take that every day of the week. And I don't hate at like plus 2.5, you get the Blackhawks against the Avalanche. I know it can go sideways very quickly on a pick like that, but at minus 110, I don't hate that pick either.
Not bad.
Bert, you got your pick for tonight?
Yeah, this is Stevie's little betting segment.
Okay, but like, I want to see a little side bet between
I want to hear Stevie's thoughts on this. So I go back to the wellness a lot. I'm going Marner power play point at plus 210. Listen, right now, the Leafs power play is one of the best in the league. I think it's second. Over the last 10 games, it's over 38%. Like they're really on fire at the moment. I don't know if it's the introduction of Tyler Bertuzzi, but everything seems to be clicking on that PP1. And I mentioned it to you earlier. I mean, the Bruins PK is not great. I mean, 74% since the All-Star break, which they're letting in too many goals. And I think that's where the Leafs can take advantage. And also maybe just a touch of a sprinkle, just a touch, just a little sprinkle off the top. Tyler Bertuzzi power play point plus 525.
That's great, but I want to see a side bet between you guys. I want to see that. I want to see Albert wear a Bruins sweater or put a Bruins.
I'll run it back.
I'll maple leaf on his tattoo, a maple leaf on his forehead. I wanted something like that.
I'll run it back. Look, hey, I don't like to disclose this, but there is a Maple Leafs jersey in my closet.
Oh wow!
So if we're betting on something here, I'm willing to run it back the Justin Pooni bet, where loser has to wear, whether it's a logo taped onto them or a jersey. I will wear the jersey. I'm assuming you don't have a Bruins jersey in that closet there of yours, Albert. So I'll do the logo bet with you.
Can't back down now.
Whoever that, and on Wednesday's show, loser has to wear the other team's logo.
I'll reluctantly agree. I'll do it for the content. I'll do it for the content.
I go to them into it. Stevie, it's been a pleasure. We know you'll enjoy the game tonight, and we'll see you on Wednesday, my friend.
Sounds good. Talk to you guys then.